For 3 days in a row, Eli, a little boy, kept pointing at the neighbor's trash can and crying. His mom, Maya, couldn't understand why he was so scared. She felt worried and didn't know what to do. Every time Eli woke up crying, he would press his tiny hands against the window, pointing to the same trash can in the neighbor's yard. Eli couldn't talk yet, but his cries were loud and scared, like he wanted to tell her something very important. "What's wrong, baby?" Maya asked, holding him close. But Eli just kept pointing, his finger trembling. Maya tried to calm him down, but he wouldn't stop crying. He wasn't just upset, he was terrified. She talked to her husband, James, about it. "It's not normal," she told him. "He's scared of that trash can." But James said, "He's just a kid. Kids get fixated on weird things. He'll forget about it soon." But Maya couldn't let it go. Now, on the third day, Eli was crying again, pointing at the trash can. Maya decided to do something about it. "All right, Eli," she said. "I'll check it out and show you there's nothing there." She carried Eli outside. The air was cold, and the morning was very quiet. Eli clung to her, his cries getting softer, but still pointing at the trash can. Maya's hands shook as she walked over to it. She felt silly for being scared of a trash can, but something deep inside her made her nervous. When she lifted the lid, she saw garbage bags, old newspapers, and trash. She started to feel relieved, but then she saw it. A tiny, pale hand sticking out from under a torn bag. Maya froze. Her heart pounded, and her breath got stuck in her throat. She carefully pulled back the bag and saw a baby. A tiny baby wrapped in a dirty blanket. The baby wasn't moving, and its skin was cold. "Oh no," Maya whispered, her voice shaking. She touched the baby's cheek, and it felt like ice. Eli had stopped crying and was staring wide-eyed at the baby, as if he understood what was happening. Maya picked up the baby, holding it close to try and warm it up. "It's okay," she whispered, though she was scared. "I'll help you." Maya ran back to her house, holding the baby. She grabbed her phone and called 911. "There's a baby in the trash," she said, her voice cracking. "Please send help." The operator promised to send help, but Maya couldn't wait. What if they didn't get there in time? She bundled Eli up, grabbed the baby, and hurried to her car. "We're going to the hospital," she told herself. She strapped Eli into his car seat and wrapped the baby in her scarf to keep it warm. Eli looked at the baby and whispered, "Mommy, baby." "I know, sweetheart," Maya said, her heart aching. She drove as fast as she could, not stopping for anything. Other drivers honked their horns, but Maya didn't care. She had to get to the hospital. The baby was so still, and she was terrified it wouldn't make it. When she got to the hospital, she rushed inside, shouting for help. Nurses came running, and they took the baby from her arms. "Please help her," Maya begged. "I found her in the trash." The nurses hurried the baby into a room. Maya sat down in a chair, her hands shaking and her eyes full of tears. She felt so scared and helpless. Then James arrived. He ran to her, kneeling in front of her. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I don't know," Maya said, her voice trembling. The baby was so small and cold. "I'm scared she won't make it." James hugged her tightly. "You did everything you could, Maya. Now we have to trust the doctors." James took Eli home so Maya could stay at the hospital. She wanted to be there in case the baby needed her. Days went by, and Maya stayed at the hospital, waiting for news. The nurses were kind, smiling at her, and telling her the doctors were doing their best. Finally, one day a nurse came to her with good news. "The baby is stable," she said. Maya felt a wave of relief, so strong it made her dizzy. "Thank you," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. The baby started getting better little by little. Maya stayed by her side, talking to her and holding her tiny hand. She felt like the baby could sense she was there and that it helped. Weeks later, the doctor said the baby didn't need intensive care anymore. She was moved to a regular room, and Maya spent every moment with her. But soon, Maya knew the time would come when the baby would be healthy enough to leave, and the authorities would take over. One afternoon, Maya sat by the baby's crib, thinking about what to do. She called James. Her voice shook, but there was determination in her words. Maya looked at the tiny baby in her arms. The little girl was sleeping so peacefully, her tiny chest rising and falling with each soft breath. The baby seemed so small, so fragile, and so perfect. Maya couldn't stop staring at her. She was on the phone with her husband, James. "James," she began, her voice soft. "I've been thinking." She paused, trying to find the right words. She looked at the baby again, her heart filling with love. "I don't think I can let her go. I want to bring her home." There was a long pause on the other end of the phone. Maya could picture James in her mind. She imagined him sitting there with a serious look on his face, his brow furrowed as he thought about what she had just said. "Maya, are you sure about this?" James finally asked. His voice was calm, but cautious. "This is a big decision. We need to think about Eli. This will change everything for him. For us." Maya nodded, even though he couldn't see her. "I know," she said softly. She reached out and gently touched the baby's cheek with her fingers. "But it feels like she was brought into our life for a reason. I can't explain it, but it's like she's meant to be here with us. She needs someone to take care of her, and I feel like we need her too." James let out a long sigh, the kind he made when he was deep in thought. "Maya, this isn't going to be easy," he said. "We didn't plan for another baby. We have to think about so many things: money, time, emotions. This is a big step, and it's not something we can just jump into." "I've been thinking about this for weeks," Maya said, her voice growing steadier. "I've watched her fight so hard, and I've been by her side every day. I can't imagine just walking away from her now. I need you to understand. Please." There was silence again on the other end of the line. When James finally spoke, his voice was softer. "All right," he said. "If this is really what you want, we'll figure it out together. I'll support you, Maya." Tears filled Maya's eyes, but she held them back. "Thank you, James," she said, her voice shaking a little. "I promise you won't regret this. It just feels right." 2 weeks later, all the paperwork was finished. No one had come forward to claim the baby. There were no family members, no relatives. It was as if the baby had come out of nowhere, wrapped in a faded old blanket. On the day Maya finally got to bring the baby home, she felt both excited and nervous. She had bought a brand new car seat just for the occasion. Her heart was racing as she carefully strapped the tiny girl in and headed home. They named her Isla. It was a name that Maya had been saying to herself in quiet moments when no one else was around. It felt like the perfect name, full of hope and new beginnings. When Maya walked through the door with Isla in her arms, her little boy, Eli, was sitting in the living room. His eyes lit up when he saw the baby. "Baby!" he shouted, running over with excitement. He held out his tiny hands, wanting to touch her. James came over too, placing a hand gently on Maya's shoulder. His face was a mix of emotions: concern, love, and hope. "Welcome home, Isla," he said softly. Maya felt a rush of happiness. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she also knew they would face it together. The first few weeks were tough. There were sleepless nights filled with crying and bottle feeding. Maya was exhausted, and there were moments when she doubted herself. Did I make the right choice? She wondered sometimes. But then she would see little moments that made it all worth it. Like the way Eli would gently rock Isla's bassinet, or the way James held her, his face soft and full of love. Money was tighter than before. James worked extra hours at his job, and Maya started cutting corners wherever she could. The house was messier and noisier, and there were days when Maya felt like she couldn't handle it all. But there were also moments of pure joy. One day, Isla giggled for the first time. It was the sweetest sound Maya had ever heard, and it filled the house with laughter. Eli loved lying on the floor next to Isla, his little face close to hers. He would babble to her, and she would wave her tiny hands, watching him with wide, adoring eyes. One afternoon, Maya stood in the kitchen, watching Eli and Isla play on a blanket in the living room. Eli was talking to her in his toddler way, and Isla was looking at him like he was the most amazing thing in the world. James walked up behind Maya and wrapped his arms around her. He rested his chin on her shoulder and smiled. "They look happy," he said. "They are," Maya replied, leaning back into him. "And so am I." Even though things were hard, Maya knew they were building something beautiful together. One quiet evening, Maya was giving Isla a bath. Isla was splashing happily in the water, her tiny hands making little waves. Maya laughed, loving the baby's giggles. But as she reached out to lift Isla out of the tub, something caught her eye. There on Isla's wrist was a tiny mark. Maya leaned in closer, squinting to see it better. It wasn't dirt or a birthmark. It looked like a tattoo. Maya froze, her heart racing. The tattoo was small, no bigger than a penny, and it was a swirl of lines and dots that formed a strange symbol. She touched it gently, hoping it might just be an ink stain, but it didn't wipe off. It was real. That night, Maya couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the mark. Who would tattoo a baby? Why? She felt a knot of worry in her stomach. The next day, Maya looked at the tattoo again. It was definitely real. She decided she had to tell James. James, she said, her voice quiet but serious. There's something I need to show you. She gently lifted Isla's arm and showed him the tiny mark on her wrist. James frowned, leaning in to look closely. Is that a tattoo? Maya nodded. I don't know what it means, but I think it might be important. It could be a clue about where she came from. The next day, Maya went to the police station. She felt nervous and out of place as she carried Isla through the big, busy building. She explained what she had found, and soon a kind detective named Nolan came to talk to her. Detective Nolan looked at the tattoo and nodded. We've seen marks like this before, she said. They're not common, but they do show up sometimes. They're often connected to human trafficking. Maya felt her stomach drop. The words hit her like a cold wind. Trafficking? She asked, her voice shaking. You mean she could have been trafficked? Detective Nolan nodded. It's possible, but we don't know for sure yet. We're going to investigate and try to find out more. In the meantime, we'll need your help. Maya felt overwhelmed as she left the station. She held Isla close, promising herself that she would protect her no matter what. Days turned into weeks, and Maya waited anxiously for news. Every time the phone rang, her heart jumped. She wanted answers, but she was also afraid of what she might learn. Then one cold afternoon in November, the phone rang. It was Detective Nolan. Maya, we might have a lead, she said. Can you come to the station? It's about the blanket Isla was found in. Maya quickly bundled Isla up and called James. Together, they went to the station, their hearts full of both hope and fear. Inside, Detective Nolan led them to a small, quiet room. Maya and James held hands tightly, waiting to hear what she had found. Maya saw Nolan walk in with a folder in her hands. Maya noticed a picture peeking out of the folder. It was the photo she had taken of the blanket. Nolan's face was serious, her eyes focused. We looked closely at the details you gave us about the blanket, Nolan began. Her voice was calm, but firm. It wasn't easy, but we traced it back to the manufacturer. It's made by a small company in a factory outside of town. Maya's heart started to race. So, you know where it came from? She asked, trying to sound calm. Nolan nodded. Yes, and there's more, she said. The factory told us they only make this blanket for one shop downtown. The shop keeps records of their sales. They sold a bunch of these blankets to someone who paid with cash. They didn't leave their name, but the shopkeeper remembered them. James, who was sitting nearby, leaned forward. What did the shopkeeper say? He asked. Nolan hesitated before answering. It was a man probably in his 40s, average build, but the shopkeeper noticed his van. It was old, dark, and had a dent on the passenger door. Maya felt her stomach twist. It wasn't much, but it was more than they'd had before. What now? She asked quietly. Nolan's eyes met hers. We found the van. Traffic cameras spotted it near the outskirts of town. It's been seen at a rundown building in the industrial area. No bills, no owner. It's like someone is trying to hide it. Maya felt a chill run through her. Do you think that's where? Nolan nodded, her face serious. We're organizing a raid. We need to move fast. The next 2 days were a blur. Nolan and her team prepared for the raid. Maya wasn't allowed to go, so she stayed home, pacing and holding her phone, waiting for news. Finally, the call came early in the morning. We're going in now, Nolan told her. I'll call you when it's over. Maya waited, her heart pounding. Each minute felt like an hour. Finally, her phone buzzed again. Nolan's voice was calm, but serious. We found the van, and more. There were people inside the building, including children. Maya's heart sank. Children, she whispered. Yes, Nolan said. It's not just one case. It's a whole operation. We found documents that might help us learn more about where these children came from. Maya's mind raced. She thought of Isla, the little girl she had found. What about Isla? She asked. Nolan's voice softened. We're still going through the files, but we think Isla's connected to all this. We're looking for answers. When Maya hung up, she looked over at Isla, who was playing with James. The little girl was laughing, completely unaware of what was happening. Maya's chest tightened. She didn't know what they would find out, but she was scared. James came over and hugged her. We'll figure this out together, he said. We'll keep her safe. The next day, Nolan called Maya to the station. Maya sat in a small room with James beside her. Nolan's face was serious. We've learned more about Isla, Nolan said. She was born to a woman named Hannah, who was also a victim. Hannah was taken by this group about 2 years ago. She was forced to have children who would be sold. But Hannah never stopped trying to protect Isla. Maya felt like the air had been knocked out of her. What do you mean? She asked. Hannah smuggled Isla out, Nolan said gently. She left her where someone might find her. That's how Isla ended up near your house. It was the last thing Hannah could do to save her. Maya's heart broke. What happened to Hannah? Nolan's expression was somber. She didn't make it. The group caught her after she smuggled Isla out. Tears streamed down Maya's face. She thought of Hannah, a mother who had sacrificed everything for her baby. She gave her life for Isla, Maya whispered. Nolan nodded. She wanted Isla to have a chance to live, even if she couldn't be there. Maya wiped her tears. I want to adopt Isla, she said firmly. I want to give her the life Hannah wanted for her. I'll make sure she's loved. Nolan smiled softly. Hannah would have wanted that. Maya and James started the adoption process right away. It took weeks of meetings and paperwork, but they didn't give up. Finally, it was official. Isla was their daughter. They celebrated by taking Isla to the park, watching her laugh and play. Maya's heart was full of love. Later, Maya visited Hannah's grave. It was a quiet, unmarked spot. She brought white lilies and knelt down, holding Isla close. Hannah, she said softly, Isla is safe now. She's happy, and she's loved. I promise to take care of her. Thank you for trusting me with her. I'll love her enough for both of us. Isla reached for the flowers, giggling. Maya smiled through her tears. You're strong, just like your mom, she whispered. As they left, Maya looked up at the sky, feeling a sense of peace. She imagined Hannah watching over them, proud of her little girl. Maya held Isla close, knowing she would always protect her. She had a family now, a home filled with love, and a promise to keep. Isla would always be safe and happy. At home, Eli ran to hug them. Mommy, Isla, he shouted. Can we play? Maya laughed, nodding. Yes, sweetheart, we can play. We have all the time in the world. That night, as Maya rocked Isla to sleep, she looked out the window and whispered, Thank you, Hannah. Because of you, Isla has a future. I'll make sure she knows how much you loved her. Isla stirred in her sleep, and Maya held her close, knowing they would face the future together as a family. If you enjoyed this story and would like to see more content like it, I encourage you to subscribe to my channel. By subscribing, you'll stay updated on all our latest, inspiring and heartwarming stories, and have the opportunity to engage with our growing community. Additionally, I would love to hear your thoughts and feedback in the comment section below. Thank you for your support, and I look forward to sharing more captivating narratives with you.